Good afternoon, everyone. This extra assignment is going to be learning how to make a polygonal effect over the top of an image. You have Chloe to thank for this one, because far be it from me to crush the dreams of any of my students, so you're welcome, Chloe. First thing you need to do is find an image to open up into Photoshop. So I'm going to use my image of link that we used last class. Before we do this effect, we need to do some prep work to the image. So if we do not have some things selected, we're going to have to do that right now. First thing you need to do is select View, and we want to make sure Rulers and Snap have check marks next to them. If they don't, you can just click on it. So now I will re-put that check mark next to Snap. Rulers will bring up your rulers on the top and side, horizontal and vertical, of your image. The other thing we need to do is click back on View, go to Show, and Grid. Next, we are going to make some adjustments to our grid. So come up to Edit, click on Edit, and scroll down to Preferences, all the way at the bottom. On Preferences, go to Guides, Grid, and Slices. We need to change a few things in here. So if your style is not on lines, click on the drop-down menu and change it to lines. Change your grid line every pixel and every 20 pixels. Make your subdivision 1. And we're going to change the color. Mine is already on gray, so I'm good. But if yours is not on gray, click on your color picker and select a gray color about midway. It's going to make it easier to see the grid. Hit OK, and hit OK again. Now that we have our grid set up, we're going to make this picture of Link look like this. This is the polygonal effect. We're drawing different shapes on top of the image that we have, and we're going to average the color to make it a flat color. Back on our grid, since we selected Snap, when we draw a shape, it will lock into the corners of the grid. Before you start drawing any shapes, we need to make sure we have the right tool selected. So let's come over to our selection tools, and we're going to select the Polygonal Lasso tool. So let's go ahead and make a duplicate layer by holding down Control and pressing the J key. This is the layer that we're going to work on. Now, I'm going to start with his eyes, but since I'm zoomed out, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, Control+, and I'm going to hold down my spacebar, and then I can click and drag to move over. So if I want to draw some shapes into his eyes and start my effect, I'm going to draw my shapes over like areas. By that I mean, if I draw a shape over this entire section of his eye, it's going to average the colors together. The way we do that is Filter, Blur, and Average. So now I have this light gray blue. If I were to make my shapes a little bit smaller onto similar colored areas, the effect would look better. So I'm going to go ahead and edit undo this by Control Z, and then I'm going to do Control D to get rid of my selection and make a new shape. So if I were to just make a shape over the black section of his eye, basically clicking in the areas where I want to make the shapes. Now when I go to Filter, Blur, Average, there's a black polygonal shape right there. It's just a triangle. So since I have Snap selected on my grid, when I go to draw my next shape, and I click in this corner, draw a line over to that corner, make another click with my mouse, back to that corner, and back to my original corner. When you see that little circle, I am completing my selection. So when I click on that, it gives me my selection. Since I've drawn this next shape and I have Snap selected, it eliminates any empty space between my shapes. Now, I don't have to go over and select Filter, Blur, and Average every single time. After you draw a shape, you can select the last filter that you used by holding down Control and hitting F. That will make my blur right in that shape right there. I'm keeping my shapes small around the eye since the eye is a smaller area. Control F. Again, I'm clicking everywhere I'm making the shape. Control F. Now, if I were to come down here and say I want to start doing his nose, I can make bigger shapes. I can click down here, come all the way down to this part, over, and then back up. It will still average every color inside that shape, but you're going to have to fill in every area. So the bigger the area, the bigger the shape you can do. But you want to make sure the colors are kind of similar. I don't want to come over here, go over his hair, his eye, and his face all in one spot and then do Control F, because it just gives me one giant colored shape. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that, and then Control D to get rid of my selection. So this is where the polygonal part comes into play. You're drawing different polygonal shapes in different areas. It doesn't always have to be a triangle. For instance, if I want to do his hair, I don't always have to have it in the corner of my grid lines either. So if I'm trying to do this line of the hair, I can start my selection right here and make a point following the direction of the hair. So as you see, my line is kind of following back. But I do have to close out the selection to be able to average it. So now when I close this selection, I can do Control F, and I will get that one strand of hair right there. But again, every space needs to be filled up. So if I'm making odd selections with the hair, I'm going to have to go back later on and fill in any empty spots in between them. Like this part right in between those. Let me zoom in so you can see that. Hold down my space bar and then I can click and drag over. So if I'm trying to get that little spot of skin in between those hairlines, I'm going to click here, go all the way there, down to here, and back up to close it out. Control F, and then there's that little patch right there. So eventually, when you make enough shapes, you can fill in the whole area. Let me zoom out, Control minus. My goal is to get this picture of Link to look like that. It's a lot more shapes, it's time consuming, but it's not that difficult to do. After you make that first average of color, and then you continue drawing your shapes, all you have to do is just hit Control F, and it will average again and again. So if you are done with your assignment, you can find an image, follow this tutorial, and make a polygonal version of the image.